This is getting ugly, as a poor start to the season for two New York Rangers in particular has forced Peter Laviolette to call them out. And one New York Rangers star in particular has spoken out himself, and some of his comments are pretty shocking. We're going to break that down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button. It's free and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And that's right, Peter Laviolette calling out Mika Zibanejad and K'Andre Miller. And it's about time, I think. And I think most fans are feeling the same way. And we're going to get into that in a second in terms of what Mika Zibanejad had to say, which was pretty interesting, and I think it was a pretty good quote as well. But from Peter Laviolette said that he feels both Jones and Schneider, the Jones and Schneider pair, and the Cooley, Hedl, and Kakko line have warranted more minutes going forward. Now, obviously, unfortunately, the other night, Hedl gets injured, so he won't be on the third line for the foreseeable future, at least at this point. But the sentiment has been, I think reciprocated between the fans and obviously the coach that the third line has been very good. And while they're missing one part of that, your best players are not your best players, at least 5-on-5 so far early in this season. And Peter Laviolette is seeing that. And what I mean by best players, not even just on the forward group, the defense as well. The top four, Jones and Schneider are not, in the top four. They are slated right now as, the fifth and sixth defenseman, and he's saying these guys need more ice time because they're playing just that good. They're outplaying the rest of their teammates on the defensive end. And again, the third line 5-on-5 this season has been one of the best in hockey and one of the best for the New York Rangers. And Peter Laviolette saying that he needs more out of his top guys. I thought that was very interesting. We'll get to another Peter Laviolette quote in a few minutes, but this is from Vince Mercogliano, and it's on Mika Zibanejad. And he's come out and, had some comments about his slow start to the season and how he's been dealing with that. And this is one of those stories that rises above goals and assists. A raw Mika Zibanejad opened up about the mental struggle of fighting through his recent slump and trying to stay positive. It's the hardest thing ever. And while he is picking up points here and there, he has not been playing to the standard that I think all Rangers fans want. First of all, the Rangers' best players to play to, and also what we've seen Mika Zibanejad do. And we'll get to that, some of the stats in a second. But Mika Zibanejad came out and said, "It's the hardest thing ever. I can't explain it. I can always talk. I can always answer your guys' questions to the best of my abilities to explain it. I will never be able to fully explain what it is when you're in the situation. You have the mantras," he said. "You have the sayings to yourself. Forget about the mistake. Just next action, next game, next shift. It's harder than it sounds. But if I'm going to be like, oh, this is so tough, then it's not going to help me." And I think this is the correct mindset to have. And I think I somewhat understand what he's saying. When you're in a rut like this, when you're not able to score, it's really all coming down on you at the same time. It's really hard to get out of it. But, you're paid $8 million to figure that out and to produce for the New York Rangers. So he has to figure this out in short order and get back to playing, not only, his offensive game, but be better defensively as well and be more responsible defensively. But I do like the mindset. I do like that he said, being negative, and he does go, there's more in the article as well where he goes into, don't be negative. Try not to pull the negatives out of this. Just try and be positive. And I think Rangers fans tend to get upset sometimes because you hear these same answers for some of these players. But at the same time, I think, Zibanejad has the correct mindset to try and get through this, and I think that he will. I think he's going to start to put up the points again. But again, I'm really worried about his defensive game, and I think Vince brings up a really good point here. We'll get to the 5-on-5 numbers in a minute. But this kind of slump, this mental lapse, whatever you want to call it, the last few games or to start the season, really, it's bled into his usually reliable defensive game. And now Mika Zibanejad is not somebody I look at as like the best defensive center in the league, but usually he does put together a pretty complete game, or he can at times. And this thing, whatever it is that's bothering him, has bled into other areas of his game, and he just looks lost sometimes, especially defensively. I'm really worried about that personally. And opposing teams are scoring an average of 4.11 goals per 60 minutes, while Zibanejad is on the ice at 5-on-5 this season, according to Natural Stat Trick. That is not good. The opposing team is scoring 4 goals a game against Mika Zibanejad on 5-on-5 minutes. That is not great. He has not been great 5-on-5. He's been pretty good. I would argue that him and Kreider have been better 4-on-4 or shorthanded than they have been 5-on-5 or even on the power play, which is crazy. But which ranks, or at least they look that way. Maybe the points wouldn't back my point up, but that ranks as the second worst rate on the team. It's a stark difference from the 2.21 goals against per 60 he posted last season. I mean, it's almost double. It is almost double. That is pretty absurd when you think about it, especially because the Rangers have found success so far this year. I mean, they're right there in the mix for first in the Metro. So it's pretty impressive. And I feel like when I'm out there, they've been scoring on everything, said Zibanejad. That's not an excuse. It's just the way it goes. Obviously, there has been a couple now in the past few weeks, but I just try to focus on what I can control. And what I can control is my mindset and how I look at things. But I think Zibanejad has to shift, not his mindset, but gears. He has to find another level of play this season because he's being outplayed by other players on the team who are getting less minutes. It's pretty crazy if you look at it. And again, from Vince, looking at some of the 5-on-5 numbers for the New York Rangers is pretty striking. And again, keep in mind, these stats specifically that he posted are from a couple days ago, but I wanted to bring it up because the point continues even when they're missing a guy like Hedl in the lineup. But again, some of these stats are a few days old, but Panarin, Lafreniere, Cooley, Hedl, Kako are the only ones really producing. And again, that third line, we've talked about it. We've had videos on it. They've been fantastic. Fox and Trocheck are at 4 points. Zibanejad at 3. Kreider isn't even listed here at 1. Again, these are a little bit old, but it's pretty striking. It is pretty striking 5-on-5. If you look at it, I mean, the third line has been very productive. And then you even got Schneider in there, Zach Jones in there as well. He just scored again the other night. So it's pretty shocking, the 5-on-5 numbers, and they have to get that up there. I mean, Kreider, we know he's good on the power play, and that's kind of his thing, right? But he's got to get going 5-on-5 to help out the team. And Zibanejad, not just offensively, defensively. Like I said, I think the defensive lapses so far this season are the thing that concerns me the most. And Peter Laviolette was asked why he thinks Mika Zibanejad is pressing right now. I can't speak for Mika and where he's at. You'd have to ask him. I know that we count on Mika. He's an important player for us. And, the fan reaction is all the same right now. It's disheartening that, Zibanejad and Miller, right? We barely touched on Miller in this video, continue to be constants in the Rangers breakdowns. That's the thing. Every Rangers breakdown where it's a really ugly player, a really ugly goal against, you can look at the replay and it's Miller on the ice or it's Zibanejad on the ice or sometimes both. And in a video last week, I broke down, in a game where you might have been able to win if you brought your A game against the Winnipeg Jets, there was a couple really bad breakdowns from these two guys on the ice at the same time specifically. So I think the sentiment is the same throughout the fan base. And Johnny Lazarus asked Peter Laviolette if he's experienced something like this situation with Mika Zibanejad in previous markets with a different player, or if the New York market makes it a bit more magnified. And I think we all know that it does in New York, but there's no excuses at the end of the day. You're paid a lot of money. You're playing on a really good team. You should produce. You should lock in. And because the ultimate goal is winning the Stanley Cup, and I think that they all know that they have to achieve that this season because things are going to change after this season. But Laviolette went on to say, I do think that markets play into it a bit. We're in New York City. We're the New York Rangers, and we're fortunate for that, and I love that he said that. There's an expectation for the way the team plays, the way I coach, and all of that, and you can read the rest of the quote, but he goes on to say, oftentimes when you do that, you'll find team success, and it seems to be quiet down, or it seems to quiet down a little bit. But right now, he hasn't found the success, and the Rangers are rolling right now. I think that's the main takeaway for most fans. The Rangers are continuing to find some ways to win, but I think it's unsustainable. It's relying on your goaltending, and it could work earlier in the season, but I'm not sure it's going to work in the playoffs. But it's relying on your third line 5-on-5, and it's relying on your goaltending, and of course their special teams because they've been really good. But they have to get going 5-on-5. There's a couple issues here, and especially the defensive lapses. They have been glaring. They have been awful, especially from Keandre Miller and Mika Zibanejad. So they got to get going there. They got to clean it up, and I think that's one of the issues the Rangers have been dealing with all season long. But let me know in the comments what you think of Peter Laviolette's comments, what you think of Mika Zibanejad's comments, what you think he can do to get going, because I think he's just got to lock in. He's got to, the attention to details things. He's throwing too many pucks away. He's throwing too many pucks up the middle, stuff like that. So he's just really got to focus in and get the mental aspect of the game under control. And let me know what you think about Keandre Miller as well. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.